Hey guys, it's Maymay, and this week's Stampin' Saturday video is going to be a little bit longer of a project than the past ones. We're going to make 8 tags. Now, I started this by taking a 12 by 12 inch piece of craft colored cardstock and I cut it into 6 by 6 squares. Now, one of those squares I scored in the middle at 3 inches. You only have to score one of them. You don't have to score the rest, and I'll show you why as we get going. Now, I pulled out my original MISTI. This is the original size MISTI, and I'm going to put this cardstock in the corner. And at this point, I'm setting up the stamp. My idea behind this is I have this tree stamp, which I think is so adorable. It is made by Decorative, and it's pretty large. And I thought I could stamp this across the center of this 6 by 6 cardstock and then cut it in half and end up with 2 tags with a tree on either side, if that makes sense. If you saw the thumbnail photo, you know what I'm saying. So I'm lining this stamp up in the center of this cardstock, and I'm taking my time to make sure that the score line I made runs down the middle of the tree trunk. Now, if you're not sure, you can take your ruler, that's what I'm doing here, and just lay it in the middle to let you know that it is running between that tree trunk. So see how that works? Now I can pick this stamp up on the MISTI, and I know it's where it needs to be when I put the rest of my 6 by 6 squares in there. So that's why we only score 1. Now I'm using my VersaFine Onyx Black ink for this tree. Now, a little warning about these stamps. These stamps are silicone stamps, and they have very fine lines. And if you're not careful, you can overstamp these, meaning you can kind of squish them. So this is one reason I was using my MISTI, because I use less pressure when I use the MISTI than I do when I use a traditional block. Now, the middle of this stamp, I don't know if you can see this, but I don't put much pressure on the middle of the stamp, and can you see how pale that is in the middle? I go back with my ink. Another thing I like about the MISTI, I can add some more ink to it and go back and just put pressure in that area, and not too much pressure because I don't want to squish that stamp, but just enough to get that tree stamped on there really well. Now I do the same thing with the other 4 pieces of cardstock that I cut. I think this is kind of cool because you kind of do one of the work, but when you cut these in half, you end up with 8 pieces. You know, the stamp is kind of used in 2 places. I thought this was kind of cool. So here I'm going to ink this one up again and keep going. Now, again, on these cardstocks, I don't have to score them because I know I've already got my stamp lined up in the MISTI where it needs to go, so I didn't need to score them anymore. Now I'm taking that 6 by 6 paper and cutting it in half at 3 inches, and see how we get a tree on one side and a tree on the other. So we've taken one stamp and we've made 2 tags from it. I think this is pretty cool. This part of it is pretty quick. The coloring and the decoration is where some of the time comes into it. Now I'm using my large angle punch from We Are Memory Keepers, and I'm turning these into tags. I love this punch. It makes tag creating super simple. It's my favorite. Now with my Crop-A-Dile, I'm sliding that little dial up to the 1/2 inch mark on the larger hole of the hole punch side. And now with all 8 tags stacked up together, I'm just going to run them to that stopper and then punch my hole through all of them all at one time. That's really quick and convenient. So you can see here that all the holes are punched in one little squeeze. So that was great. Now I'm cutting some pieces of paper that are 3 inches wide by 1 inch tall. These are going to become little heels on the bottom of our tag, like a place for our tree to be grounded into. Notice here that the tree, I was going to leave them straight, but it looks kind of boring to me, so I decided to turn it into a heel. So notice that the tree on this card is on the right-hand side. So I'm going to cut this heel, leaving the right-hand side of the heel taller. The reason for that is I need my tree to touch that heel so it looks like it's planted. If I made a rounded heel, the tree wouldn't go all the way down to the little ground that we're making there. So I end up making 8 of these. 1 for every one of the tags. I just go ahead and cut them all low on one side and up to the top on the other so that my tree will always touch them on all the tags. Now once I do this, I have to remember that 4 of them are going to face in one direction while the other 4 are going to face the other direction. Now it makes sense. You can see the tree has a place to live. So I go ahead and I lay out my hillsides the way they need to be so I won't forget. And I noticed that I did these backwards, but it still worked out for me. So I'm laying them out the way I need to have them so I know that whenever I ink them, I'll have exactly the right direction. Using some vintage photo distress ink and my little ink blending tool, I ink all the tags up. Go ahead and get them all inked, only on the front. I didn't worry about inking the back. I could have, and it wouldn't have hurt anything, but I just didn't. Then I ink up all the hillsides because this is going to give the card a little more rustic feel to it. And I do every one of them, making sure I do 4 on one side of the hill and then 4 on the other side of the hill. I hope that makes sense. Now I'm just taking my art glitter glue and I'm going to glue the hills down to all of the tags. A lot of this work is mass production work, which is really good because you can really push out a lot of stuff quickly with mass production. But some of it gets a little time consuming, like the coloring and the different things we're going to do. That's why this is kind of maybe a 3 or 4 hour project. It may not be if you're a experienced colorer or what have you, but for me it took me probably about 3 hours to finish this totally. And that was from, thought process all the way through. So there's the 8 tags with all the hillsides on. Now I'm going back to that same stamp set, and it has these cool little pieces for the tree. There's a swing set, there's a birdhouse, there's leaves, there's a squirrel, there's birds, there's all kinds of stuff. And I decided to use the swing set and the birdhouse. What I was just doing there was making sure which side of the tree or which tag needed to have the swing set, and I decided that the tree on the left-hand side was best for the swing, and then this one on the right-hand side was best for the birdhouse. So I stamped that birdhouse on all 4 of those tags. Now this one I put the swing set on. So you can see I just did birdhouse on one side, swing set on the other. I'm going back to the MISTI again for this because this is a silicone stamp set, and again I can over stamp and I can press too hard. And when I do that, sometimes like the ropes for the swing look a little uneven. So that's why I went back to the MISTI. If you're going to use an acrylic block, just use very soft, even pressure, and you should be all right. You'll see here, and I left this in so you could see this, I lift this up, and I wasn't happy with how the swing set looked, so I go back and put a little bit of pressure wherever it needs to be until I feel like it's right. I'm not having to re-ink because I'm not putting even pressure. That was the issue. I had to go back and evenly press it down. So I put a swing set on all of those tags, by the way. Now back to that same set, and I pulled the little birdie out, and I want you to watch this. I put this silicone stamp onto my block. See how I'm a little bit rocking that block? I'm putting light pressure, but doing that little swirly rock, make sure that all the edges of that stamp get put onto the page. Not a big rock. I'm not trying to get like a different technique out of it. I just want all of that image to stamp down onto the page. You'll get a feel for this. Practice this on paper that's not your project, and you'll get a feel for it. Here I do the same thing, but I'm adding the tiny squirrel to the tree trunk, or to the tree limb. It totally needed that squirrel. I think it is the cutest little thing. So I put that on all of the swing set tags. It's fun designing the tags. These are just quick. They're quick, but they're time consuming. They're easy, but they're time consuming. Now to my Prismacolor Premier Color pencils, and I'm going to do color pencil coloring today, just because I haven't done it in a while. This is dark brown and sienna brown. Now I'm going to take that sienna color, and I'm going to start coloring the trees. I'm going to color all the trees on all 8 tags with this sienna color first. I'm just going to go ahead and lay down a light layer of color. I am not scrubbing the page hard. I'm not trying to leave a shine from the wax. I'm barely leaving any color at all onto that tree branch. And that's exactly what I want to do. I just want to lay in a little bit of color. I'm kind of going all the way out to the edge on this one, but I discovered later I didn't even have to go all the way out to the edge because I used the darker color on the little edges of the branches. So if you don't want to color all the way out, just get close to the edges. Now I take the dark brown and I start laying in shadows. Now to save time, I decided not to get extremely detailed with this. So pretty much anywhere there was a bend or anywhere where on the edges of bigger limbs, I did some of the darker color, and I also did the darker color on the tips of the limbs because I felt like that would be darker because they're smaller pieces. So just play around with this. Because you're going to be coloring a lot of these trees, I didn't get very detailed. I just added some dimension with the 2 colors. It works for me, and I think when you see them in person, you can really see the dimensions. So again, I'm mass producing, so I just do all of the cards at the same time, doing the same step to each card every time. Now I'm going to take Crimson Red and Tuscan Red, and on this little birdhouse, I'm going to lay down a layer of red, just that light red first, only in the birdhouse itself. Then I'm going to take that Tuscan Red, which is a darker red, and I'm going to color the roof and the base of the birdhouse. That gives me some dimension without having to do any shading. And then finally on these little birdhouses, just to save time, the lines of the middle I color with the darker red. So it looks like some dimension is there, but I don't spend a whole lot of time doing any shading or anything in those tiny little places. Now you can go to town. You can do all the coloring you want, but I just thought I want to get these completed and I want them to look cute without taking the whole weekend. Now it's time to put our sentiment on, and I'm using this one from my new stamp set called Blessings. It says, "Praise God from whom all blessings flow," and it works so perfect in this spot, or at least I thought it did. So I do this here with some Onyx Black VersaFine ink, and I just love how this turns out. Again, using the MISTI because I've laid all this out using the MISTI, so all the tags are the same, so I can just lay them in there and stamp them one at a time, and it just made this go a little quicker. You certainly don't have to use the MISTI. This can be done without that. So I stamped that sentiment on all of them. I love the sentiment. It's nice and big too, so it really takes up a lot of space there. Now for the next one, I go into my Memory Lane stamp set and I pull out the sentiment that says, "Gather a harvest of love," and I put it on the other side of the swing set, and I just thought it looked really cute there. Again, using that VersaFine Onyx Black, I think it looks great on that craft colored cardstock. I really like how this one turns out. After I did this, I thought this tag needed a little something else, and I'll show you in a second what I did to kind of fill that in. Just needed a little something. All right, so I'm getting to this point, and you know what I have to do. I have to pull out the white pen. I just had to. I love craft card projects with white. I just think it pops. It is so beautiful. And so I take my time, and I stitch every one of these tags. It didn't take as long as you might think. You kind of get into a rhythm, and it flows pretty well. But I went ahead and did all the way around the card and the hillside. But then I got to thinking, some of you guys might not be real comfortable with your stitching. And my friend Nyoka taught me this trick. Take your ruler and lay it where you want your stitches to go. And you can use it to help you make a straight stitch line. But you can also use it to help you spread out your stitches. So if you need for them to be a little more uniform, try this trick. It works really well. Thanks, Nyoka. Here's what I did. Red paper and a little tiny heart punch. I love this. These hearts are flying onto my desk, and I'm just like, I'm going to let them fly, and I'll pick them up in a second, but I thought it was fun. And I decided on that Gather a Harvest of Love tag to just stick a little red heart in the bottom corner. I thought that really added a little bit of something. So I do that on all 4 of those that say Gather a Harvest of Love. Now the last thing we got to do is work on the back of these tags. And because I don't have any dimension on the front of the tags, meaning I didn't use any foam tape or lift anything up, I can easily stamp these now. But if you did any dimension on the front where they might have they wouldn't lay evenly for you to stamp, you might want to do this part before you add all that dimension. I definitely add the stamps before you do the dimension. So I just line up a sentiment from my stamp set called Homemade with Love that says something special just for you. I decided not to put a specific occasion in a stamp because these could pretty much be used with any gift. And so I'm going to just stamp this instead of being like, you know, Merry Christmas or Happy Fall. I could use it any old way I want. Now I decided to do a test stamp, and I would suggest you do this too. So I'm just going to take a piece of scrap cardstock and do a little test stamp because those words I lined up myself, and sometimes it's best to check and make sure they're nice and straight before you go and do all your stamping and go, oh, it's crooked. Plus you've done all that work on those tags. So it was good. So I ink it up and I stamp all 8 of the tags with that same sentiment on the back. Now a while back a subscriber sent me these little eyelets that are leaf shaped, and I have wanted to use them forever, and I finally found the perfect place. These tags just are perfect for these little eyelets. So I take my Crop-A-Dile, which has an eyelet setter on the end of it, and I place one of those eyelets in the hole, and then using the Crop-A-Dile at the top of the Crop-A-Dile, there's the eyelet setter. I just sit that over the top and give it a gentle squeeze. Now here's a trick. Squeeze slowly and take your time. And if you need to squeeze it and take it out and check it, you can do that too to make sure you don't over squeeze those eyelets, but it worked perfect. Now when I run this thick ribbon through the top, I don't have to worry about my paper tearing because those eyelets are in there and they're protecting that cardstock. So I added some gold polka dot ribbon. It's kind of a satin finish ribbon. Went ahead and did that to all the tags. And now baker's twine. I love this technique. You take your baker's twine and you tie it around that ribbon at the top. And that ribbon is what you can attach it to your gift with, but then you don't lose your bow. You still have a bow tied at the bottom with your baker's twine. So I'm going to tie a little knot here. So there's the top, and you can fidget with it while you're tying or after you're tying it. And I think I do a double knot here. No, I didn't. Now I'm getting my tweezers, and I slide them in to hold that little knot into place. And now I can tie a bow on top of it. Oh no, I did do a double knot. Okay, I do it on top of the tweezers. The things I remember. So there's a double knot. Now we can tie a bow. I love the tweezer trick. I learned that from Amy Rasavi at Paper Prairie and Ink. It's awesome. Now I'm going to teach you a new trick. Take the end of your baker's twine, loop it, put your tweezers through it, and pull the loose end out and make a knot on the end of your baker's twine, and then fray the edges. I love how this turned out looking. I'm going to show you again. I'm going to loop it, take my tweezers, stick them through the hole, and grab that loose end and just kind of twist it back through. It's almost like crochet, and tie a knot and then fray that edge. And I really like how that looks. I think that would work with any baker's twine. Now a little fray check for the ends of those ribbons, just so they don't fray too bad between now and when I get to use them. And I've started using this again, and I don't know why I ever stopped using fray check. It works really well. So there's one finished tag. I really like how that looks. And I went ahead and did all of them the same way, and look at this little army of tags we have. Super fun, super easy. I hope you guys try it, and if you do, you know I want to see it. Check us out on my Facebook group at Maymay Made It, and so did I, and share with us your projects. I'll talk to you again next Saturday. Bye-bye.